Well, I always like to be the entrepreneur that kind of represents the scrappy kind of American start small and build entrepreneurs who didn't go to business school. So I would say that I make a distinction between the word company and the word business. So I love the idea of building a company of human beings. And it just so happens that when I started Jeni's, the Lord of the Rings movies was like just starting to hit. And I've always been a huge Tolkien fan. When I saw those movies, it was like, this is exactly what we're doing. I mean, we're building a fellowship, a company of people. Each of us is going to have a totally different, awesome talent. And we're together, superpower. And then together, we're going to create something greater than the sum of our parts. We're going to get the ring to Mordor. We're going to have a vision quest, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it with these, we're going to be united by our values. And that's going to be what the company is. And sometimes I feel like, it's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be complicated. Entrepreneurship is really not complicated when you think about it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to say welcome to Jeni Britton. Thank you for coming to the Entrepreneur Studio all the way out here in the middle of Oklahoma City.
Thank you for having me. I love Oklahoma City, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. I think it has been amazing seeing how your story really embodies the story of what every kind of small business entrepreneur hopes to achieve, right? And so I just want to unpack some of that and make sure that everybody hears your story. But like the thing for me is, this was the connection I was trying to make. I was like, how do you go from being in college to just saying, I'm going to go make ice cream, to winning a James Beard Award? And like since 1996, you've sold 9.3 million pints of ice cream. And it's like, how did that happen and where did that come from?
Oh my God, that's right. You guys are mathletes here. So that's a great number.
Oh yeah.
Wow, you guys figured that. Okay. I mean, I would just say the short answer to that question is vision, effort, and time. And one of the things that I do differently, I think, in my business, or I've done differently in my life, or not so differently, but like at least in terms of like what the media tends to cover, is that I've taken a really long time. We've taken a really long time at Jeni's to build this company. And there are a lot of really great reasons for that. We didn't know what we were doing, or I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning, but I knew what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I knew that nobody else was doing it, and I was going to have to figure it out. And when you do something like that, it takes time. But not only does it take time to figure out how to do it, it takes time to figure out what you can do. So I knew that I wanted in the beginning to get really great dairy, for instance, really great milk and cream. And I thought that would be easy, and it wasn't.
Wow.
The dairy industry is very closed, very difficult to work with right now in the last, 20 or 30 years. That was really the beginning of it. And then I started working at dairies, and I started learning about milk proteins over time and what we can do with milk proteins that's different than what anybody else has done in ice cream. And because I was looking for good dairy, I learned that. And so there were a lot of things like that over this time that I spent building Jeni's, over these decades, actually, where I learned what's possible, by starting really small and building very slowly. And that has become our advantage in the world today.
That's amazing. One of the things that I try to ask everybody sitting on this side of the table is, there was a moment that was either the catalyst or there was a spark, but there was some connection you made, looking back in retrospective. What was that kind of the story of the biggest moment that was like the spark or the birthplace of this idea to do ice cream and to do it maybe the way that you're doing it? Like back in your life, where were you like, this is the moment that was born?
And there was a moment, and it was, I have to take you back because there were things that were happening in my life at the time that enabled the moment, right? So the moments don't just come out of nowhere in a way. They seem like they do. But what had really happened is that I had spent years kind of in this creative time of my life. I had gotten myself into Ohio State University, which was not a given at all. I was studying art. Oh, yes. The Ohio State University, pretty much my backyard even now, in Columbus. I was studying art and art history, but really not on a track. I mean, I was really just doing whatever I wanted there, which is really fun at Ohio State or places like Ohio State because it's enormous and there is an expert on everything. So one semester they might do vampire folklore and I was like there for that, and then the next one it's like ancient Hellenistic economies. And I was like, that sounds cool. So I go over there and take the hardest class I ever took, lots of art history, lots of fine arts. I love illustration. So a lot of that. And I was meeting a lot of people. And I was also working in a French bakery that I adored with a wonderful French family that ran it. And I was learning about ingredients. I mean, I would literally lock myself in the pantry and just eat the little Valrhona batons that you would put in the pain au chocolat that they made from scratch there. I mean, it was incredible. I met this guy who worked in the chemistry department at Ohio State, and he was Parisian. And I was like so interested in him because I had just been in the Midwest. I mean, I hadn't traveled anywhere, and he was studying something, but it had to do with scent. And so he would bring me little vials of scent from the chemistry department. And I was like, wow, I'm really connected to my sense of smell. And so I started studying perfuming and ancient perfuming in particular and thinking that maybe I could use that in art or that I would maybe become a perfumer. And pastry, one night I'm going to a dinner party. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I'd been collecting mostly essential oils and making scents and blending perfumes and like thinking about ancient perfuming. And I decided to use one of those in ice cream, store-bought ice cream. So I got vanilla and I got chocolate and I made like a spicy chocolate with a cayenne essential oil. And I made a rose petal vanilla just by dripping one drop of like this like $400 an ounce Bulgarian rose into vanilla ice cream. And then the cayenne, which doesn't have a scent, but it just has heat, or the physical sensation of heat on your tongue. And when I took a bite of those ice creams, it was like I knew my whole life would be ice cream. I knew in that moment I knew who I would become. And it has been true. What I didn't know is how long it would take, the effort. I didn't know how much. I didn't know what it would take. I didn't know anything about having a business. I didn't know anything about making even ice cream.
Yeah.
I just knew that the rest of my life would be occupied with ice cream. So I started making ice creams. And from then on, everybody in my friend group knew me as the ice cream girl. Everywhere I went, I took ice cream. Everybody loved it. I was always scenting ice cream. But what happened was when I took a bite of that ice cream, everything that I had been playing with or learning about, all the passions that I had been following at Ohio State and beyond, I was really on my own very early. And that was a blessing for me because I didn't have parents that were saying like, stay on track, get a degree. I was doing whatever I wanted to do. And because I was doing that, I was studying ancient perfuming. So I understood how fats work. I understood that like that ancient perfumers would use fat that was solid at room temperature, but melted on contact with your skin. From my grandmother, I knew that butter did that, right? She would always say, don't put the onion next to the butter. So butterfat is the fat that's in milk and cream. So ice cream is literally the perfect carrier of scent. It melts below body temperature. As soon as it hits your tongue, it relaxes and all the flavor comes out, all the scent actually. And so ice cream is really about scent. And in that moment, like all of this stuff hits me. You can tell stories with scent. This is art. This is a craft. This is something I can do with my hands. This is something that keeps me busy. This is like a way for me to have a business, which I always wanted to have. I didn't want to work for anybody else ever in my life, including teachers. It was a path to freedom for me. Actually, that's exactly how I looked at it.
Path to freedom. It's like I could see you. I mean, as soon as you said that, I was like, here you are in front of the freezer and you've got a pint of ice cream in one hand and you've got the essential oils in the next. And you're like, I can do this. I can do something. And you're like your whole life, unfolds like right there. That's really, that is a moment for sure.
Yeah. And then I had to learn everything. I had to learn how to make ice cream. I had to learn about how an ice cream machine works. I had to become a chemist. I mean, I was an artist and I thought in my generation, like, and actually they still do this to kids sometimes, but they literally separated the kids that were supposed to be science and math kids from the kids that were supposed to be like English and art. Right. And I was always in that side, the language and art and literature side. And so therefore I was like, I don't know, almost like shunned from science. And I really believed that story. I believed I was bad at science and math. Turns out I'm actually pretty good at it.
That is really interesting. The sense that you have of not being good at something that because of what somebody told you and you end up being really good at it, right? That is something that I think a lot of young adults go through.
Yes. And I'm like always there because ice cream is such a fun, safe place to talk about this creativity and science, and that scientists are creative and artists are scientists, and that we're all mathletes. Like we all understand math in our atoms.
Yes.
Like we understand pattern to our absolute DNA. Like,
yeah. I can't do algebra, but I can do a P&L.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, that's a skill.
Yeah.
That is a skill.
Yeah.
And there's storytelling in that.
Yeah, there really is. The thing that about the thing that I have just loved about the effervescence that's about you, right, is this idea that you made ice cream an art form, and it's not something that you would go like, oh my gosh, that, because a lot of people think, oh, culinary food, that's an art form, but ice cream, right? Like, it's not what many think of, like that's sort of the thing. But like, just look at how everything is snowballed from, when you had your epiphany all the way to what's going on now, and how crowded that market has gotten, how artistic that market has really grown. What's sort of the thing that you're thinking about today? And then we'll get back to, all of the things that you had to learn, but what's the thing today, how crowded the market's gotten, in ice cream, in the grocery store aisle, you know what I mean? What's the thing that, as you stand back and look, what's sort of the thing that you're like, this is where we came? And do you imagine where it's going to go next?
I mean, I would just say that, when you're growing a company, as I was in the middle of Ohio, as a woman who didn't know much about business, and, the competition that you see, as soon as we start getting press, we start getting copycats and competitors. And that's actually a really, really hard thing for a founder to go through. It's just really hard, and yet at the same time, you also know that it cannot become a trend unless you've created this movement, which means there's got to be a lot of people doing it, not just even in America, but around the world, which has actually happened. And so it's on one hand, it's like the coolest thing ever. I mean, I'm talking with women in South Africa who got my book and started ice cream. Cairo Creamery in Egypt. I happened to run into them at a library in LA. And they were like, they recognized me and they're like, we started Cairo Creamery because we got your book.
Oh, wow.
Little creameries all over America. But then, of course, you see the big companies sort of almost doing this or very much doing a similar thing and being shifted by this movement of storytelling and provenance of ingredients, and really just getting closer to your makers, growers, and producers. And also, I think, paying fairly. It's the coolest thing in the whole world to see, actually, to know that, like, this was something that was a passion for me in 1996. And it was just me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I felt very alone for a long time. And now it's this big movement in ice cream, not just in America, but everywhere I go. I mean, I was in Berlin all summer and there's just all these ice cream makers who are in this model.
It's incredible. When you decided, like, not only this is going to be sort of my art form, and you had the sort of wave of this is what my life is going to be like, when did you decide it's going to be a business? And where did you get started?
Immediately, because when I was growing up, my grandparents had a business and it was like cleaning offices after work, right? So just like this small, it was called Medina Maintenance. That was the county they lived in. And after my grandfather got home from working at the newspaper, he would set type all day, like wooden type, which is it's hard to believe that even happened in my lifetime when I was a kid. But then he would come home and we would eat dinner, and I was always at my grandparents' house. And we would get in his little truck and we would go clean office buildings. And they were so proud of this business. And my grandmother always said, if you can't find a job, make one. So I always felt very entrepreneurial. And I think that kids, when you see that, and it doesn't matter what it is, because your grandmother cleaning office buildings, or, your dad is, some tech guy or whatever, like, it doesn't matter what it is. You see that as a path to freedom. You see that as your, this idea that you can create an idea of value to people, create something of value to other people, and build a life around it for yourself and other people. And it's a very simple, very powerful concept that kids get immediately. I think that, somebody, like, I've heard that, like, once your basic needs are met as a human being, food and love and safety and shelter, water, the next thing you do is you make things better. You make art, and I always think, I'm not sure if this is true, but I'm pretty sure, because I feel like I'm pretty intuitive. The next thing might be to trade those things, like, hey, you did that and I have this, and maybe I can make your thing better and you can make my thing better by trading. And that's just like so innate to humans. And so this idea of entrepreneurship to me was innate, and I'm sure it came from my grandmother. But I think that it's something that we need to teach every kid by the time they're 8. Because once you get it, it's a lens. You see the whole world through that lens.
There's a great book called The Kidpreneur that I read as I have 4 boys. And we all have read that book together, just helping them understand, entrepreneurship, how math is important, how to create an idea, what's important about the idea, how to make it come to life. I think it's really important. If there isn't ready available, like you had, osmosis observation of entrepreneurship, there are resources out there that that can help you, talk to kids about entrepreneurship, because that resourcefulness is a really big part of life. You don't have to be just an individual, like an entrepreneur or a small business owner, to have that resourcefulness that an entrepreneur has. Right.
Absolutely. And, I think sometimes about when I started Jeni's, like, I have lots of friends who are entrepreneurs, and I see like a lot of the like sort of business world, and everybody's really proud of their businesses and what they do. But I mean, I also see a lot of people like, I don't know, it's almost like they go into business, and probably because parents want this of the kids too, but they almost go into business for the accolades. Like, I was so brilliant that I played the game of business. Like it's chess, and I won. I'm a business winner, right? And they go into business for that. That was not on my mind when I started Jeni's. I didn't know anything about that world. I started Jeni's because I thought, if I can make this ice cream, and if I love it so much, maybe somebody else will love it. And if I can make them happy, if I can make one person happy, I can make 2 people happy. And if I can make a few hundred people happy, I can make a living. And if I can do that, so it was really always about creating something of value to somebody else. If they want to give me their money for this, then I can live off of that. And then I can make another job, and we can grow. And so that, I feel like that is also missing from our discussion of entrepreneurship with kids, because really all you have to do is make something that first maybe solves a problem for you, because if it does, it will probably solve something for somebody else. And then you can start tweaking it right alongside your customers. Yeah. Just listen to feedback.
Yeah. That is, just listen to feedback is a really short phrase, but it's probably the most transformational thing that can happen, is if you just start listening to feedback. Yeah. And listening means, I'm going to do something about what I heard.
Yes, because, when I started, I was an artist. I mean, I was a wannabe artist. I mean, I was coming from the art perspective, and now my other grandmother was an artist.
Okay.
And so my other grandmother, Enid, would never have taken money for her art, or, she would have taken money for her art that she made, but not a commission, right? She's not going to make art because you want her to make something. Like, she's a true artist, right? She's going to make whatever she wants. And if you want to give her money, that's great. Otherwise, she doesn't care, right? So she also doesn't want to make the same thing twice, right? So she's moving on, right? Which was absolutely amazing. But she would teach us how to make like a basket or whatever. I tell the story sometimes, like we would go to the ditch and, literally pick the grasses and dye them in the sun, or dry them in the sun, then dye them colors and make baskets out of them. Every one of Enid's baskets were different. I always wanted mine to be the exact same. But I would go to Betty's house, my other grandmother, the entrepreneur grandmother, and she would be like, let's make 20 of these and sell them in the neighborhood. And when Betty and I would do it with my sister, my goal was to make the last one exactly the same as the first one. But when I started Scream Ice Cream, which is my first ice cream shop out of, after I literally walked out of an art class, I was still thinking like an artist. So I was still thinking that the whole concept was that I would do something new each day, and that was what you came for.
Yeah.
It took me a really long time to realize that's not what people want.
Yeah, that's not the repeat business model every time. There are a few people that like that, but those are the real early adopters or the innovators.
But if you start with what you think is good, and you're just open to listening, your customers will tell you exactly where to go.
Yeah.
You have to bring your thing to it and then listen. So it is an act of co-creation in that way.
Well, you mentioned Scream. And you mentioned I think it was the next thing on your continuum, was how to trade it. And I read this somewhere that it was like at the farmer's market, right? If you were surviving by making trades, here's some ice cream, give me some food.
Yeah. Or give me ingredients to make more ice cream.
So tell us about that. What was it like, sort of like, cause I think that there's a nucleus here of the X factor that you have, as like, it's like, I have grit, I have determination, right? And you have I'd say a healthy dose of that. And being able to say, I want to do this so bad that I'm going to figure out how to make it work is really, really huge. But the trading thing is the one that I was like,
and you're going to suffer for it. I mean, honestly, like, when I think sometimes people don't believe, because now, it's like, it's so many decades in, and now I'm like I'm where I'm at now. It's like, it's a very different place than where I was for the first 15 years of the company, right? I mean, I lived out of my car for 3 months. I traded for food, literally traded ice cream for food. And it wasn't that, I loved it, to be honest. I thought it was the greatest adventure ever. I did not ever feel that, I did not have a safety net. So it wasn't like I could go home somewhere else. There wasn't one. My mom was really, really sick. She had a baby. It was a hard situation there. My dad was out of the picture. I was really, really alone. And I was just young, and I was just like, whatever, I had a super punk rock attitude about it. And all my friends, this is what, I built the company really for my friends, and they were all the artists and musicians and whatever. And I was just like, I'm going to work harder than anybody else. I'm going to be here. I'm going to show up. And this is my adventure. It was great, but also I could never do it again. Right. So it was so hard that I can even like sometimes get PTSD, like if I walk into the market, because of the smell or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like it was so hard to work that much for as long as I did. I mean, it was decades of, and when I say decades, 2.5, but really of at least 12-hour days. I mean, I was working nonstop. Even there was always, and there still is, a little light on in my head. That's, there's like little Jeni at a desk there with the light on, working on a flavor at all hours of the day to this day.
That's incredible.
But it's also like
little Jeni at the desk.
I know, it's like always in my head. There's always somebody that's like ready to like jump in, but or that's just always at it. But it's like on one hand, it was the greatest adventure ever. It was just the coolest. I'm so grateful to that 22-year-old that walked out of class and went and did it. On the other hand, I also know how hard it was, and how hard it was on my body and my mental health and my emotional health over time.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like, that's what an adventure is. It has to hurt. Like it has to be really hard. Mm-hmm. And that was both what was fun about it and what was hard, to get through.
I like how you said, I could never do it again. Mm-hmm. You're like, that was a lot.
Yeah.
And I would prefer not to revisit those moments. One of the things that I'd say are regularly noted or known for is I had to do every aspect of the company. So as you grew the company, you had to know every aspect. So talk to us a little bit about kind of the first few things you discovered, and then how did it sort of advance where you're like, oh, now I need to do this part of the company. Oh, now I need to do this part of the company. So talk to us a little bit about just the hands-on approach that you've taken.
Well, at Scream, it really was just me. And there was like a young girl in the market. Her dad was like the market electrician, and she would come hang out with me, and we would like make ice cream together. She was amazing. She's like a chef in New York now. So it was really just me at Scream all day, every day. Then at Jeni's, I knew because of my experience at Scream, because I'd really burned out, because I'd been there every single day for 4 years, that I had to be thinking differently. I had to be thinking bigger. I had to be thinking about what I want to do and what I like to do and what I'm good at. And over time, get rid of, hire for everything else. Take that off of my plate. Mm. And so from the very beginning of Jeni's, that was really what it was about. It was kind of working backward from, what do we need? What do we need? I need to have somebody who's going to be doing these, first thing was making sure that our finances are protected, so that when our customers give us money, we are doing the best and most with that money that we possibly can. And that was like first. And then it was like, various managers and of course people to work at the company. But I mean, I knew I didn't want to be by myself. And I also knew that at some point we're going to need to get out of the market and not be just our little stand at the market. So we needed to do grocery, and we needed to do supply restaurants. And that was, so there was like, basically I started working backward. I was like, well, how much money do I need to make it's all very, very simple math. How much money do I need to make to afford someone to do that work? And then I would, okay, well then I have to sell that much ice cream. Mm-hmm. And I would figure out how to sell that much ice cream. And then I would get to that place, we would hire that person, and we would get to the next one, and it was literally like, okay, and I would say, how many people do we have to walk up to our shop in order to sell that much ice cream, And it would be like, okay, we got to get 100 people today, and that was really how it went for those first years in the market.
Wow. Talk to us a little bit about, I liked how you just brought up I'm going to say distribution channels. So maybe, how did you started thinking about that, but how did you go like, okay, I know that I need to go to grocery and then maybe supplying, restaurants. Those are two really great channels, especially for the niche that you were in. So how did you break in to both of those channels?
Well, first of all, I mean, when I had this idea to do ice cream, it was a much bigger idea than the market. And so I was thinking my whole vision was wrapped around this idea that like Ben and Jerry's like did it. They were in grocery. That's what I should do. We can do it differently. We'll be, we have a different target and make different ice creams. But if they can do it, I can do it. I mean, I had seen them. Like I knew that they were smart, but like not that smart. Like just like me, you know what I mean?
Rocket science.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. So we're going to do it differently than them, but but similar. So I knew that we would be in grocery. Restaurants I didn't really know, but chefs started coming to me, which was really cool. And that was awesome to help us spread the word. And even before we ended up in grocery, this is a funny story. I actually, I called the New York Times one day and I was like, yes, can I speak with Florence Fabricant? And she's like the writer of like all the new stuff in New York City. But I'm in Columbus. And it just didn't occur to me because I read the New York Times food section every week. I read the New York Times, on Sundays, with my coffee. It was my newspaper. And I was like, hey, she answered. And I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that we're doing this really cool ice cream in Ohio. And I kind of told her about it. And she's like, well, can I get it in New York? And I was like, no. Well, why don't you call me when I can? And I was thinking like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense since you write about things that are in New York and not Ohio. And so then it was like, all right, we need a website. We need to be able to ship ice cream. And then the Food Network called. So we were like, okay, we have to have a website. So in 2004, we launched our website. And it was also our first Food Network appearance. And that launched our website, which is still our biggest store. I mean, it was a kind of game-changing thing to do in 2004 to be able to ship ice cream out of the market that we were making from scratch in the farmer's market. But it enabled a lot of press. It enabled a lot. And the funny thing is that Food Network show, we had a party. We all showed up, like a local restaurant like shut down and just showed the Food Network and everybody in the whole community came out. And we had started this website. We were like, we cut it off at 250 orders because we thought we couldn't make enough ice cream to sell more than that. We thought we got 10,000 orders. I don't know. And we got one order. We were like in the restaurant. We had a computer open. We were looking at it. We were waiting for it. And we got one order, but it was the right one. I don't know who it was, but it was like number 1 Central Park West. And it was like something, and everything starts to happen for us.
No way. It was a New York order?
Mm-hmm. And it was like the address. Yeah. I don't know if it had anything to do with what happened next, but then it was like all of a sudden we started getting tons of media. And
that's ridiculous. You had one order and it was New York. Wow. Mm-hmm. All right. So what was it like, the moment that you probably had a moment of disappointment? Was it days, weeks, or months after the snowball really started where you had the one order? Like when did it sort of like,
I mean, there was never a snowball. Well, I guess it was a snowball because it just rolls very slowly. We thought to us, it was a lot. Every holiday was a big season. Maybe we would do 200 boxes of ice creams that we made and then packed and then figured out how to, ship. And that was huge for us at the time. So for me now, when I drive up to our kitchen or the distribution center and I see like the entire truck waiting just to be filled by our team. They pull a truck up and leave it there for us to fill every day. And I think like to go from thinking that like 50 orders, in the holiday season and peak season is like a day might be like massive and amazing. And we were so happy about that to now seeing what it is pretty cool.
That is.
But it was, I mean, it was just very, very slow over a very long period of time.
Well, you learned a lot playing a lot of the roles when you're small, and then you start to hit, a moment of build out and you've got a scale and you've decided on some channels. But I think it's really important for you to talk about how you design teams and how important the team is to success, especially when you're looking to scale a business.
Well, I always like to be the entrepreneur that kind of represents the scrappy kind of American start small and build entrepreneurs who didn't go to business school. So I would say that I make a distinction between the word company and the word business. So I love the idea of building a company of human beings. And it just so happens that when I started Jeni's, the Lord of the Rings movies was like just starting to hit. And I've always been a huge Tolkien fan. So when I saw those movies, it was like, this is exactly what we're doing. I mean, we're building a fellowship, a company of people. Each of us is going to have a totally different, awesome talent. And we're together, superpower. And then together, we're going to create something greater than the sum of our parts. We're going to get the ring to Mordor. We're going to have a vision quest, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it with these, we're going to be united by our values, and that's going to be what the company is. And sometimes I feel like, it's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be complicated. Entrepreneurship is really not complicated when you think about it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you've had to do some, I'd say mission-driven things. Like you talk about a lot of the mission-driven work that you do. What do you sort of center people around right now?
What I would say is that while I think the sort of principles of entrepreneurship are not complicated, what's the hardest thing about building a company is staying true to your vision and keeping everybody kind of going in the same direction and united by the same values. Because when you build a fellowship, everybody wants, something, or everybody has like a pet project, or everybody has like a thing. And someone does have to kind of decide what gets done and what doesn't, and how and what is important for this mission. And that is what is actually the hardest thing about entrepreneurship and building a company and being a founder and being any kind of leader is keeping everybody going in the same direction and saying, no, when you have to say no, even though maybe they're great ideas, they're just not for right now, And so I feel like that was the work, and actually some of the failures over those early decades is like so easy to be like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then all of a sudden, like, you're kind of bloated as a company doing so many things that aren't really helping move this fellowship toward Mordor, And so for us, that was really, in a way, like, those were those early years of like learning about that, but you don't realize it when you're doing it, that it's happening.
Yeah.
It's only afterward.
Well, I kind of think of two things, like framework wise on how you're building a company. And you talked about values, and then you talked about how to decide. And I always think of the framework of your values is how you screen people, right? And who should be a part of the team and what seat they should have. And then, your focus is how you decide opportunities. And if you can, as a leader, entrepreneur, leadership team, really distill and crystallize your actual values that you're going to hire and fire by, and then your core focus of how you're going to say yes or no to opportunities, the decision's sort of pre-made.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And that's why mission should be your marching orders. Your mission should answer a lot of questions for people in your company. It's an important thing to have. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be on your website. It doesn't have to be a part of marketing at all, but it should be something that answers questions for people so that they can keep going in that same direction. And you have to be very clear about that. And I agree. You hire people for values. In fact, people will find you because they know your values. The people that are attracted to your company, especially a company like Jeni's where we're very clear about our values, that's why people want to work for us.
Yeah.
And then that becomes our superhero skill, is that we get some of the best talent because people want to work in a place where their values are aligned. And that makes them very passionate about the work they do.
Something that you got to have some pretty distinct values to make the move that you did when you had the listeria scare.
Yeah.
To tell us about that, where you're like, oh shit.
Well, that's where your values really, really help. I mean, we were very clear about who we believed we were. A company that cared deeply about our customers, our team, our community. We're a community-led company. We care about quality. We care about safety very, very much. And we believed all of that, but we had never really been tested. And I think it's interesting that when you get tested, that is when you prove really first and foremost to yourself who you actually are. And so when we got the call in 2015, April 2015, that there was a pint of ours that tested positive for listeria in Lincoln, Nebraska, it was not obviously a call that we wanted to get. I mean, it was devastating, but the first thing that any of us thought about was our customers, because that was the only thing we ever thought about every day already was our customers, what we live to do and what we exist for. No one on our team thought about finance, it was the furthest from our mind. And I think that's true to this day. And so what we were able to do is very quickly move into a plan. And that's actually really hard when you have a recall like this, or when you have this kind of crisis. Because if we had thought about, finance first, it would have dragged out, because we would have tried to find, whatever lot numbers and whatever. There are ways that you can drag this out legally, and that just doesn't occur to our team. And we figured out a plan that we thought would really, we knew the best thing for us to do is get the ice cream off the market so we could make sure that nobody gets sick. We didn't know if somebody would be sick already, and that was terrifying. It turns out nobody was, and that's great. And we prevented an outbreak by recalling everything as quickly as we were able to do. But that was, that's where your values, when when you get tested and you hold them without even questioning them. Because now I look back and I'm like, God, I was amazing. Every single person on that team, we all got there very quickly, and no one questioned it, because it was just part of who we are deeply. And then you can say that's really your values.
Yeah. I mean, and, there are times you can operate outside of your values, and it really does something to you, your culture and things like that. I think it's really a lot about leaders to say, we're going to live in our values, and that is the decision. We're going to stay there. We're going to live in them. So we don't have, there's degradation on reputational issues, like what you were just saying. Oh man, we could have had a real crisis on our hands reputationally, but you were able to sort of say, because of our value system and because of the way we're going to operate, not only was everybody safe, but we were able to do something really meaningful to demonstrate to our company that we're going to stand behind what we believe. And then the recovery, because there is a financial impact, because there's a decision to do something and pull stuff off. And then you're like, we still are a company that does need to fund things and still need to provide jobs. So talk to us about like how the values maybe reemerged, and some specifics about how you faced recovery in the same way
and that's
as
the hard
you
part.
did.
It's like and all of this has, if this is like any crisis that you go through personally or with your team or in business, wherever, the early stages of crisis are actually pretty easy. It's devastating, but it's also pretty easy, and in a way weirdly fun, because you have to be wildly creative. But it's as you get into it, when you realize what has actually happened, that it, when you can really start to process it. The earliest, you don't have time. You're in survival mode. You don't have time to process anything really. And so this is where it sort of, our recovery took a really long time, because we were an ice cream company. We're going into summer, and we just recalled all of our product that we had spent the entire winter, and even like the summer before, the farmers were growing ingredients for us. So those are all gone now. We have no ingredients. We have no ice cream, and the warm weather is coming. We also have no money, because we'd just gotten through a long winter. And so this was where, we kind of wake up and we're like, wow, how are we going to do this? And I'll tell you what happens when you get to this place, personally, because I've been there too, and as a company, is that the rules are different. And it's kind of this weird freeing place, when you're actually at the bottom and you have to like fight your way back from nothing. We had an amazing family in the community that came out to help us financially. But one of the reasons was because early on in this crisis, now we're maybe a couple months in, we had to close our stores, and people from the community started coming out and leaving us notes on the Post-it notes. Somebody started this trend of Post-it notes on our doors, and they were beautiful, beautiful messages from our community. And that made us internally to the company. We didn't have a voice externally because of FDA kind of controls all of that. But internally, we heard that message from our customers, and we felt that, there would be a hole in the world if we disappeared, if we can't find our way back. And it made us fight harder than we ever probably could have otherwise. And also help the family that came out to help us see that this was worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. And so we had some people from the community that came out to help us. And this is that community values story where our values, which are very well known, our values of community, of being there for the community and being a part of the community and valuing community and making people feel loved. We'd done that for so long, and now people were doing it back for us. And it was really incredible to see that. If we hadn't been that company, we would not exist today. There's no way we would have been able to come back from that.
It's powerful. That's an investment that you made in the community. And it's like, what's in the secret sauce there? You know what I mean? Because think about it. You're selling ice cream, right? And you had enough, I don't know, some X factor to get the community, because you talk about being community led and that it's a core part of your values, but like, what's the secret sauce there? What was the thing that was sort of the woven into the fabric of a bunch of people locally putting notes on your door? How did that happen? What do you think the secret sauce really was for your company?
I think that this can be true of any company. And I don't think we were doing it intentionally, except that, we were just being us. And I think in that we were doing it intentionally. And that is simply, I think people felt seen and still do and heard when they're in our presence, in our space, in our world. Mm. I think that especially with ice cream, people see themselves in their flavor and they identify with it very strongly. And I worked the counter for 10 years, I made the ice creams and served them. And I just know that people, when they're at our counter, they're there to get to know someone else better and to reveal a little bit about themselves. And they do that starting with flavor, the flavor that that they're choosing at the counter. And I think that we make people feel seen and cared for and heard and a sense of belonging in a way that they didn't feel it in other places. And that is really true of the best companies. I actually don't love the word brand. I mean, the way that I use the word brand is company. And so what your values are, what you stand for, and how you make people feel. And I think it's the way the best companies or the best brands do that. Mm-hmm. And it is so much more than, your graphic design or the product you put out. It is just how you talk to your customers, whether it's I still write the sides of the pints often. It's how we talk to customers over the counter. It's how we train our team. And probably the most important thing to this is that, just to continue talking about this, sort of values in the company, when the people in the company behind the scenes where customers never see, when those people, those leaders, those workers, anywhere in the company, and we all abide by our values, we all show up every day, we create this sense of pride. And so that is the most important thing we do. That trickles over the counter. People who work on our counter hand that to our customers. They represent what they see in the company, not what we tell them. So they represent what they've seen when they visited Columbus and they visited the market and they visited our headquarters and they saw how people talk, here in the company. And then they go back to their stores and they are so proud that they want to tell the customers about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is the brand. That is what it is.
But is that the thing fueling, think about it, that ice cream's pretty transactional, right? In most cases, this one is less so transactional. There's more of a human element, but you're selling in grocery stores too. How do you take that experience and deliver it in a grocery store?
Art. That's what we do. So on our little team, we make our own art and design. And even if it's not perfect, it has character, has soul. Every one of those pints is designed by Patrick and me and photographed by Erica. And then Beth and I write the pint copy. We also, that team and a couple other people created the flavor, R&D'd the flavor, got it through. Sometimes we aren't sure if people are going to like it, but we love it. And we put it through anyway. And even to this day, that's how it is. And so we communicate through our pint, through the glass door in the grocery store to people. And when you look at our pints, they are not just communicating that we're a cool company, that we have great graphic design, because there's other companies that have that too. we're communicating that we see you and we have something here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I always say that I want our like the door in the grocery store with our, couple of shelves to look like a box of donuts. When you open it up, there is something there for you. They're all different, but something is there for you.
Mm-hmm.
So even in a grocery store, I think our goal is to make people feel seen.
Is there sort of an ideal way that, like, let's say the first introduction to a new customer is in the grocery aisle? What are some of the things that you've seen happen where they have been able to receive that, they get it somehow, and then they connect with you in other ways and or go visit a store?
Well, I mean, I know that when we open, we know that when we open stores in a city, grocery sales go up, not down, which is sort of interesting too. We weren't sure how that was going to work. If we open, if we have 10 stores in Nashville, like are people where are they going to get the pints from? Actually, they go up in both places. So it's like awareness is great. But also it happens with shipping. People are shipping ice cream to their friends and then they see it in the store. I actually love we're sold in a few Targets and I love to go with my daughter. And of course, everywhere I go with my kids, we face the ice creams and we make sure they look good and whatever. But we love to just sit there or my kids make fun of me, but I like to just listen to people in the ice cream, whether they're buying our ice creams or not, but especially of course, if they're buying ours. And just see how they're interacting with ice cream and what they're getting and what they're, what's exciting to them. And of course, especially if they're looking at our stuff.
How awesome would that be if I was standing in the aisle and you're there with your kids and all of a sudden
staring at you,
staring, be like, which one are you going to get?
Yeah.
Which one are you going to get? You should try this one.
You look like a chocolate person.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things about building a team, right, is there's a lot of sort of leadership required to build a great team. And we talked about the fabric of that with, the values and the focus that ultimately, have resulted in what you promise as a brand and how you've been able to deliver on it. The leadership is a really huge component. I just want to know, from somebody who's been so hands-on to go make a move to be no longer founder-led and maybe get you got a professional CEO, or was this somebody that had been with the company? So talk to me about that decision, right? Where you talk about what you're doing in the company today that's maybe different, right? And how you've sort of built the leadership team that's maybe a little bit different than the way that you were running it before.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that, I still feel that companies like Jeni's, and there are many kinds of companies, but companies that are like Jeni's with this sort of visionary founder, there's that is a role. Like a visionary is a role for a company. And it's very different than CEO. And there's tons of different kinds of CEOs that you can be. But the way that I define CEO is that they are responsible for the safety and health of the company, on all aspects, right? And so if you're the founder and the visionary of the company and you're also doing that, that's a lot of work. That's a lot. You're not going to really be able to do both of those well. Mm-hmm. And so the founder, the visionary, and the CEO or whoever you hire to do that work need to be working together very, very closely. Mm-hmm. And that's how you make it work. And it's important. It's important, obviously, because I knew we were doing so much work and I wanted to protect it. I also didn't know how to organize the company. I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't frankly want to learn. I wanted to spend my time with customers, with our team. And so that was the best decision for Jeni's. And I actually think it's probably the best decision for any company, whether you call that person CEO or, chief operating officer or whatever you call them. Mm-hmm. You got to have somebody who's really taking care of that in your company, whether, at first, it was finance. That was the most important thing in operations and organizational sort of issues and management. That was really, really important for us to get done as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Often there's a founder and a co-founder, and I would say role-wise, you do tend to have a visionary and, maybe what EOS calls a visionary and an integrator. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, but that can be hard for some founders to sort of hand over the baby in some respects, right?
It's true. It can be very, very hard. And it wasn't that hard for me. It can also be hard for people in the CEO role or the operations role to collaborate.
Yeah.
Right. Because those people are trained to be the big leader, and so it really is an effort on both sides, and you have to both come to the middle. And if you don't, then it doesn't work.
Well, tell us about a moment of friction where you're like, we had this particular thing and this is how we solved it.
Oh gosh. I mean, it was constant. Just it's constant. But
like what are your rules of engagement then? What are some of the ways that you handle it?
Well, I guess it depends on what it is. I think that when it comes to marketing and branding, I think we kind of have some basic ground rules, which would be like, if it comes to marketing and branding and he doesn't agree with me, I win, but if it comes to finance or HR or, legal stuff, and I have some questions and maybe I don't agree with him, he wins and we leave the room united. It's just kind of the way it is. But I think that challenging each other is important, and being the type of person who can be challenged and, walk away united is the skill, because that's going to happen all day long. That's normal in a company. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bring your awesomeness in, put all your ideas on your table, put all your concerns on the table, work through them together. And then also somebody's got to decide, you have to decide who's going to be the ultimate decider of those specific things or whatever it is. And then you got to be okay with that. You get second, third, fourth. You can, if something doesn't work, you change it down the road. You just got to make a decision. So it's not that big of a deal. Really, most of the time.
All right. So you have locations all across the nation, cities, many cities. And that requires a lot of scale. And something that I think would be really good for you to kind of speak to is, was there a moment that you felt like you were growing too fast? Or do you think that there's been a really good pace? And if there has been a good pace, what was sort of the secret to not maybe go too fast or go too slow?
This is always the question, right? Internally too, right? Because we never want to be at a time where we're not challenged, we're not pushing ourselves, expanding and growing, because that's what's fun about what we do. And yet at the same, yes, when you get overextended, like that's no fun either. So finding that sweet spot is really important. And when you kind of, slow, in times when we've slowed down, we've actually done a lot of work on the back end to support growth later. And so what we'll always do, and it's funny because in a way I feel like I feel the same about Jeni's now as I did when we were very small, in that I'm still really excited because I'm still being pushed, because I'm still expanding, because I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And I think the company feels the same way in a way. So, in the early days, opening one new store would have been an all hands on deck effort. And now it's like, if we open 20 a year, we can do that. Yes, we're all working hard. Yes, it's hard. It's challenging everyone. But we're creating these brand new training programs and the things that we need to support that. And that's part of the fun that we're having. We're not opening 75 a year. You know what I mean? We are opening what we can open this year and have fun, challenge ourselves, and serve customers, ultimately, and train people. Because one of the things that I love the most, and I think we all do at Jeni's, is working with the young people in our stores, or just the people in our stores. Not that they have to be young, but just people in our stores. That's just the most fun thing to do. And I didn't realize, because I'm a nice Midwesterner, generally, not always, is that the more we almost expect from them, or the more we put on, they want to be the experts. And so it's really blows my mind. It's so much fun to give them as much information as we can about the ice cream, so that they can really be telling stories across the counter. And they were the ones that demanded that, because I'm trying to make it easier for everybody in the, maybe 10 years ago. And they're looking up themselves and finding out more information about ingredients so that they can tell those stories. And so the more we can give them, and this is what makes this whole thing fun. Obviously, creating those processes and the channels of communication and managing all this stuff is not easy. It's very complex, and we have amazing people. We have a great team, but it's fun, in figuring all this stuff out. It honestly feels like, I don't know if you were like this when you were a kid, but this is how I played when I was a kid. I loved organizing people around this idea. And then we would all kind of get together with this big vision, and you would just kind of do it. Everybody would do something. And I still feel very much like I'm still doing that now.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about building the the company, the brand obviously, has got a pretty meaningful reputation, well known. And I just wonder about things like, you talked a little bit about, well, you know what? What I'd really love to know, the one last thing about the company that I'd really love to know is like, what made you choose the chain over franchise? Or was it never even a thought?
It has been a thought, except that I would say honestly, in our discussions, it's like nobody would do this. Like no one's going to work as hard as we will to do this. Like just having our ice cream freezers the way that we have, like the ice cream is on display and they're American gravity freezers. So that means they get ice buildup around them. So we have to thaw them at least once a week. Like that is a Herculean effort to do. There's just goofy things behind these and we're like, nobody will do that. Well, now we have, and it's also fun to have control. I mean, to be honest, like, you have control as we're building, as we're learning about this. There are ways, and I've actually been kind of excited about the idea of franchising if we really can make it work for the person who's the franchisee.
Yeah.
And I've been learning from other companies that do it really well and thinking like, can we actually create opportunity for someone through this? So it's an interesting, whether we will at Jeni's or not, I don't know, but it is an interesting model that I don't think, just like right now, you see companies that grow and this word chain has a bad reputation. Well, for good reason, because of the, 70s, 80s and 90s and what happened there. But actually, like to make a food business work now, you have to have multiple locations in order to make it work in America.
To have the margins you need.
And you can do it really, really well. And you can actually build a company like that and get better as you get bigger. And similarly, I think we can be thinking about franchising in a new way, in terms of opportunity, but also in terms of quality and, team happiness and all of that. So I don't know if Jeni's will, but I definitely have put enough thought into it to think that you can create a new model or a new way to think about it that might be very interesting.
Well, you've spent a lot of time building, a company brand, but you also have a personal brand as well for somebody that was so shy and found the persona. So I want to know about the cookbooks and the James Beard Award. How did those things happen? Why did you go like, you know what? We're going to do a cookbook. I'm going to become an author and do a cookbook.
Well, for one thing, I had just had a baby, my daughter Greta, who will be 16 this summer. And I was bored because I was at home with her and like babies are boring. They don't do anything. You're just by yourself. And so I needed a project and I'm a doer. And so I was like, what if I write a book? What if I try to translate all the things that I had learned at the dairy and working in ice cream to a home machine and see if we can make something, a better recipe for home machines. So people can have the same fun that I'm having, And the first thing I did was try to cheat. Actually, I called my friends at Ohio State University, the Ohio State University in the dairy science department. I'd spent a lot of time over there. And I was like, okay, so Professor so-and-so, all right, here's the challenge. Can we make a better home ice cream machine or not machine, but recipe on the crappy home ice cream machines than what exists now, than the traditional sort of French custard recipe? And he was like, no, you can't. It's impossible. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, come on.
There was no challenge accepted. He was like, no.
He was like, straight up, no. And so I was like, okay. So I put Greta on my back and went in my kitchen and I had ice cream machines going all day long. And I was using the same science that the same techniques that I had discovered in the dairy, which is like to cook the milk and cream together. And then you sort of denature the proteins and they almost act like egg yolks in the way that they come together with water. Water's your enemy in ice cream. And it's a whole chemistry, equation there. But I was like thinking like a molecule, right? So how do I tie up the water so that in this home machine and in the limitations of a home kitchen, we can get a scoopable American hard body ice cream that's like harder, they can scoop pretty much right out of your freezer, but also that's stable enough that you can make different kinds of flavors and not have to worry about the recipe breaking. And over time, over a few months, with Greta there with me, I made it. I figured it out, and I was really excited. And I still gave Ohio State credit, though, I will say, because I went back and I was like, well, then, okay, here's my thesis on milk proteins that I figured out at the dairy and also working at my stove. Will you please just tell me if this is true or not? Because they don't like to give you information without, they want you to work for it, which is actually great. And I did. And he was like, yes, you are correct about your milk proteins. And so I was like, okay, cool. So that was awesome. And then that was, so that was in Food and Wine magazine. That was like a 3-page spread there. And then it led to the book. And the funny thing about the book was that, I ended up with this incredible publisher, Artisan, and they publish like Thomas Keller and some of the top chefs. They only do like 12 cookbooks a year. They keep their books, for years and years. Like it's not just like they put out books and then whatever doesn't sell, they stop publishing them. So they're an amazing company. But the book had gone to auction and they were one of the lowest bidders, but I wanted to be with them. So I did something unheard of in this process, is that I chose them even though they were lowest bidder. Because I loved them and I thought, for an Ohio girl who wants to do a book, we want to be with Thomas Keller's like publisher. So they were like, oh my God, that's so cute. That's so sweet. That's so wonderful. And I think they were like, whatever, we got a good deal on this book. Go do whatever you want, honey. And so I went and I wrote the book and I did the book and we designed the book. We did the art and illustration with 2 young women who I'd actually worked with at the library. We photographed it, did all the illustration, everything. And when it came time to like apply for the James Beard Award, I was like, you guys are going to turn it in, right? She's like, yeah, don't worry about it, Well, actually, first, we were published and it was on the New York Times bestseller list twice. And she was like, Jeni, what the heck? And I was like, well, we wrote a book for people, to make it easier for people to make ice cream. Of course, they want it. This isn't just an ego book. This was like actually worked. And then she kind of laughed when I was like, you're not going to like, you're going to put it on the James Beard, whatever nominee, whatever. Yeah, he filled out form or whatever. And she was like, don't worry, we'll do it. But kind of like,
don't
whatever.
get your hopes up.
Yeah. Well, then we were nominated. The book was nominated. And like the 2 other books in the category were these massive, gorgeous baking book and a massive, gorgeous chocolate book, like these like life books, massive books. And then there was my little book. And she was like, Jeni, you don't have to come. You're nominated, but you don't have to come. We'll be there. Don't worry. If you get it, we'll accept it for you. And I was like, I will be there.
You're like, hell no.
Why would I not be there? Why do people talk down to Ohioans? Right? I mean, anyone in the middle of the country, people just talk down to, and it's just so infuriating. They don't realize they're doing it. But so I was like, no, I'm coming. So I came and they made room for me at the table and we won. And like, in a weird way, I kind of knew it. I kind of knew it because it was such a book that was like I think if you think in terms of gifts, like if you give service and art, those are gifts that you give to the world. And as gifts, they're not transactional. They come back to you. When you really give something to the world, it comes back, and if you really think about, just taking all your ego out and just putting something beautiful out, whether it's ice cream or whatever it is, it's just keeps going, And yeah, it was a cool experience.
That is a cool experience. I mean, it's a remarkable story. And you have also the whole giving thing. You've spent a lot of time giving back, right? So I think it'd be really good to know like how you think about ingredients, right? And why you do fair trade, and what are some of the things you've done to sort of impact society, right? Just help everybody see a little bit about how you're giving back.
Well, really, and I also have like kind of a thought about it in the way that like, I don't know, it's like, it feels good to do that. So it doesn't, for me and for us at Jeni's and me as a human being, it doesn't feel good to be the person that lets everybody else do stuff. Like if I want to live in a community that I want it to be a certain way, I have to work for that. To earn it, I have to earn it. I have to go and do that. Otherwise, somebody else is going to build the community for me. And it's going to be their work. And maybe I like it or maybe I don't. But you have to get off your chair and help. And have a vision and also be able to compromise and help and, but not demand too much. But I feel like in raising a business, it's like it's funny because you really just raise the business you want to work at. And in a way it becomes this like selfish thing in a way, like this pleasure thing. You're like, I want to work at a business where we work directly with growers. And where they get paid fairly, the same way we would pay a fair trade grower in Uganda to grow vanilla beans for us, because local fair trade is also complicated, And I want to work at a business where we pay people a living wage. Like, I don't actually want to work at a business where we question whether we pay people a working wage, right? Or living wage. I want to work at a place where we figure out how to be, where we, challenge ourselves to be zero waste if we can. Those are the places that I want to work. And that's what everybody else feels at Jeni's. And really, so sort of selfishly, it means that we attract the best people to work for us. So it's like, can we make an ecosystem or a world where we all just feel good, where we all feel like we belong, everyone in it? And those go back to values. And so in a way, it's like, when you say, giving back or whatever, you're like, I don't know. I mean, we build the world that we want to see. We are we're just doing it. And
be the change. Yeah.
Be the change. Exactly. It feels really good to do that. So there's this weird selfish thing about it too. It feels much better to be connected. And, then you read these longevity studies and they're like, well, the people who live the longest are the ones that are the most involved in their community. And you're like, well, yeah, because it feels really good to do that, to not be isolated. And I moved every year growing up, so I never had a community. So I think that's one of the reasons it was always very important to me.
Yeah. It's something you were on the outside of, and then you could be on the inside of it and be a part of it. Now. It's awesome. Well, what's next for Jeni Britton?
Well, I'm writing a book. I'm still trying to kind of figure it out, but I'm having so much fun with it and being very creative with it and kind of letting it go, because I have had this sort of very long life. And, I don't know, I feel like I hope that story will inspire young people that, no matter where you are in America, you can be anything or do anything that you want to do. So I'm kind of trying to put my mind on that a little bit. Jeni's is going to continue making amazing flavors and learning about people and growing and seeing people and making people feel loved, activated, inspired, and, doing art and all the things that we do. And obviously I'm there on like as a support. We have a new CEO. She's incredible. Our team is incredible. So I kind of just applaud them and let them call me when they need me, and I'm always like, do you guys need me today? Can I?
Not yet.
Yes, exactly. They're like, Jeni, because I can be a little bit disruptive. I totally admit that at this point, I like change. I like tweaking things better, So I'm trying to figure out, I will say that one place that I work a lot in is in helping emerging entrepreneurs grow and start and encouraging people. So I feel like that's a place where I will probably spend the rest of my life as a champion of small business, especially women and people of color, because I see that as the way to really build a country of equality over time.
That's powerful. Well, we're glad you came here to help the listeners that we have, and you've answered a lot of my big questions, my long questions, but I have some rapid fire questions for you now. If your personality was a flavor, which one would it be?
Salty caramel.
No.
Because, I don't know. It's like caramel is a Midwestern, and it's an American thing. It's really buttery and smooth and lush and yummy and voluptuous and all that. But it's also salty. So it's I think that's fair.
A little salty.
There's a little salt in that.
Well, speaking of salty, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Both. Can you be both?
Always.
Probably I'm more of a night owl, but I do go to bed very early. I'm a sleep farmer. I feel like I'm about sleep. I like sleep a lot.
Okay. Cup or cone?
Okay. Definitely a cone. And that I make ice creams to be eaten off of a cone. A cone is pulls you into the moment. It makes you a little bit vulnerable. And it has this weird magic of extending time. So you can actually slow time when this is for a different podcast. You can slow time when you're eating ice cream on a cone because you are present with it. And when you're present with that, you're eating it, you're tasting it, you're more into it, and you're more into the person you're with. But also you might get ice cream on you. So you have to be a little vulnerable, which makes you a little
immersive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, you can just put a cup down. What's fun about that?
Yeah. Oh,
it's just my opinion. Well, you can do whatever you want.
I've been a cup person. I think I'm making the switch.
Okay. If I convince one person.
I know. Well, you did. I'm going to give it a shot. I mean, all my kids do cone. I'm like, what are you doing, guys?
Ice cream is made to be licked.
All right. I'm going to make that happen. All right. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received.
You You can also say, what is the most memorable advice that you can remember right now?
Oh my God, I know exactly. Well, I don't know. I mean, gosh, I think the best advice I don't, there's been so much, but also I'm not one to take advice usually because people just do give it to you
We're
a lot.
learning so many things about you.
I know, but this one guy, he was like, never burn bridges. You just never burn bridges. And he was kind of a jerk. And I was like, and he kind of screwed us after like we worked with him for a while. And he was kind of one of those guys that like loved to say things like that, but then like to make him look good when he was like not doing very nice things. So I was like, okay, well, sometimes you have to burn bridges. And like that was my advice. Is like, okay, his advice, don't burn bridges ever. But actually I've learned sometimes it's fully okay to burn it down and walk away.
There's a kind way to do that too. You don't have to annihilate it or send a nuclear device on it. You can always just go, what? My boundary is I'm not going back on the bridge and I'm going to burn it.
That's exactly, okay, yes. You can just, you can just kind of, ghost the bridge or whatever. But no, I mean, I do think that it's important as nice Midwesterners, nice middle of the country people. Sometimes we feel like we have to be everything to everybody and like make everybody happy. And I've actually, one of the best things I've learned is no, you don't. And you have to, like, if you don't protect your community, you lose it. So you have to like protect it.
It's good. One of your biggest passions outside of work?
Oh, my biggest passion by far is just atomizing in the forest, just being in the forest and like just disappearing. Totally. I did this when I was a kid. I do it now as much time as I can possibly spend in the forest.
I can just imagine you under a bunch of leaves.
Yes. That is definitely me. All season. Doesn't matter if it's ice or what is out there. I feel like, yesterday I was running down a mountain in Utah because I was imagining that there was this massive storm coming in, and there was, but also I was imagining it was much bigger than it was. And I was like, it took me 45 minutes to get up the mountain. I was like, I got to get down the mountain as fast as I can. And so I like charged down, but I felt like the whole mountain rose up inside of me. I went down the mountain in 9 minutes. It was, and like over creeks and it was just the best fun.
Exhilarating.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most hilarious or memorable mistake you've made in your business, and what'd you learn?
Oh my God, this is actually really funny. When I was in Chagrin Falls, is a wonderful little town in North Ohio, outside of Cleveland. And it's like an idyllic little town. They have a hardware store that's been there for like 150 years or something. And it's just like the perfect hardware store. Everything's perfect about this town. And one year, me being kind of artsy, but still, this is at Jeni's. This is not that long. It was 10 years ago-ish. We had this holiday, and I guess I was like depressed or something this holiday. It was just like not having a great holiday. And I was like, not everybody wants to be elves and like have the joy of the holidays. Like some people are not there. So let's make ice creams that are like dark holiday. Like ice creams were amazing. That like evoke the weight of time. So like cumin, honey, and butterscotch and like cedar wood, of wood. And like, just, it was beautiful. The flavors were great. Black forest cake. But then the store decor was like paper chains, like that you would make with like multiple color paper, but like black. and like crafts, Yeah. It looked like a dungeon. And like the women of Chagrin came in, I got a call and they were like, yeah, no, we're putting Christmas trees in your shop. Like whatever you're doing here is a no. And I got the call and they're like, is it okay if they like put the Christmas trees in here? And I realized like how stupid like I had been, like this idea of like the holidays is something we all need. We need it, even if it's not perfect, because it's a marker of time. It's a marker of community. And I just thought it was hilarious just that we even did that.
Went that direction.
Yeah.
You're like, that was the true artist coming out.
It was just goofy and embarrassing and funny. The best.
Those are the best. Mm-hmm. Well, what's a guilty pleasure that people would be surprised to know about you?
I drive fast. Too fast. I drive I love to race. I love to race, on the regular street. And in fact, I had to like get a driving coach and start going to the track because I was just like, I can't do that on the street anymore. It's not good. It's not good for anybody. I have a modded out car and, yeah. And I have done racing. Like I flew in a tiny plane to Indiana last summer and we raced Camaros in like autocross, but, always come in last. I'm terrible at it. But, when you build a company, no matter how, I'm a very calm person, but when you build a company, you're just flooded with adrenaline. And it takes a long time for that adrenaline to get out of your body. You have to figure out how to soak it up somehow. So I work with veterans because they have the same problem. And we get out on the track and go fast. And it's like, it just redirects the adrenaline. So you're not in fight or flight anymore. But yeah,
that is a lesson. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, Jeni, the belief system that you have, the belief in yourself, the belief in people, it really is that effervescence that I was talking about earlier in the conversation. It's really powerful, it's palpable, and it's something that is really inspiring. And I hope everybody who watches and listens to this reinvests into the things that they are doing and reevaluates them based on, really just the way that you just challenged us. So I just want to say thank you for coming, and thank you for being a part of the Entrepreneur Studio.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for just inviting me to Oklahoma City. I love it so much here. And it's just been so much fun to have this conversation.
So good. Until next time.
Yeah.